James woke up at dawn in a small rented room on the outskirts of the city. Outside the window, a gray dawn was dispersing the remnants of the night. Today was set to be one of the most important days of his life, an interview that could change everything. He had spent weeks preparing, rehearsing answers to questions, and rereading his cover letter. The room was cold because he was saving on heating. James quickly took an icy shower, hot water in the building often disappeared, and put on his only decent suit, bought a few years ago at a sale. The jacket was a bit tight in the shoulders, but he had no other option. He looked in the mirror. A lean guy with serious brown eyes, dark hair neatly combed, tie perfectly knotted. He needed to look confident, even though everything inside him was trembling. On the table lay a folder with documents, copies of his diploma, recommendations from professors, an invitation for an interview at Asteria Soft. His heart thumped as he mentally repeated the name. It was a well-known IT company, and the junior developer position could be his chance to escape poverty. "You've got this," James quietly encouraged himself, turning away from the mirror. He couldn't help but think of his mom. She had always believed in him. After his father left the family, James had worked wherever he could from a young age to help his mother. He had promised her that one day they'd live better. Sadly, she passed away last year, but her voice still echoed in his memory. "You'll make it, son." James took a deep breath, grabbed his briefcase with the documents, and quietly said, "I'll do this." Outside, the cold autumn morning immediately chilled him to the bone, white puffs of breath escaping his mouth. He zipped up his old jacket over the suit and hurried to the bus stop. To get to downtown, it would take almost an hour, so he left early. The city was gradually waking up. A pale sun rose in the sky, cars lined up in streams, people rushed about their business. James felt both excitement and hope. Around 8:20, he got off at the right stop near downtown and walked toward the office district. There was still plenty of time before 9. He could even grab a coffee to calm his nerves. He turned onto a quiet side street, cutting through to the building where Asteria Soft was located. The street was empty, paved with cobblestones. Yellow chestnut leaves rustled underfoot. Just a little further, the office would be past the next intersection. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sharp screech of brakes. James saw a girl step onto the road at the intersection, where the pedestrian light had just turned green, while a black car sped toward her from the right at a reckless pace. The driver wouldn't stop in time. "Watch out!" James shouted, realizing a collision was inevitable. The girl froze, her eyes wide with fear. In that instant, James lunged forward. He managed to grab the stranger's arm and yank her back, out of the car's path. A second later, the vehicle roared past, missing her by mere inches, clipping the bag on her shoulder. The gust of wind knocked James off his feet. He fell onto the sidewalk, a sharp pain shooting through his right shoulder. The car didn't even stop, disappearing around the corner. Silence returned, broken only by the pounding of his heart. James caught his breath and propped himself up on an elbow. He seemed intact. "Are you okay?" a trembling voice asked nearby. It was the girl he'd saved. Pale and shaken, she leaned toward him. Her belongings had spilled from her bag. "I'm fine," she whispered. "And you? Are you hurt?" James gathered his strength and stood up. His shoulder ached, but it didn't seem serious. "Probably fine," he replied. "The main thing is you're safe." The girl was still trembling. She tried to smile. "I didn't even have time to get scared. You saved me. What's your name?" "James," he answered, a bit flustered, looking at the stranger. She was about 25, wearing a dark blue coat and scarf, her light brown hair tied back. Her eyes shone with boundless gratitude. Together, they hurriedly gathered her scattered things. James picked up her phone and a few sheets of paper with the Asteria Soft logo. His heart skipped a beat. Did she work there? Or was she also heading to an interview? Glancing at his watch, James froze. 8:50. 10 minutes until the interview, and the office was still a few blocks away. "I'm so sorry, but I have to run," he blurted, grabbing his briefcase. "Are you sure you're okay? Should we call the police?" Don't worry, I'm fine, she assured him. I owe you my life. James just nodded and stepped back. Take care, he said, then bolted off. He ran as fast as he could, ignoring the pain. Just make it, pounded in his temples. At 8:58, James burst into the office building, breathless from running. At the 10th floor reception, where Asteria Soft was located, he panted out his name and explained he had an interview at 9. The receptionist glanced at the clock, puzzled, and quickly called someone on the intercom. After a brief conversation, she explained sympathetically, Sorry, the interview has already started with another candidate. You're late. James's heart sank. He tried to explain. Please listen. I was delayed because of an accident. I was helping someone. I'm really sorry, she replied gently. But management doesn't wait for late arrivals. We might contact you later. Stunned, James nodded silently. He felt shattered. Riding the elevator down, he stepped outside, barely feeling the ground beneath him. She's alive, that's what matters. He tried to console himself, recalling the girl's frightened eyes, but his thoughts swirled with bitterness. Because of this incident, his dream had slipped through his fingers. Catherine Lewis sat in her spacious office on the top floor of Asteria Soft. Her hands still trembled from the morning's incident. Just half an hour ago, she had nearly been hit by a car. If it weren't for that guy, her heart clenched at the memory of the black car barreling toward her. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to regain control. As the head of a major company, she couldn't let panic take over. Catherine stood and paced the office, trying to calm down. On her desk lay the papers she'd hastily gathered from the sidewalk. Among them was an unfamiliar sheet. Catherine picked it up, a resume under the name James Alexander Carter. A recent computer science graduate with honors, internship experience. At the bottom, it read, Interview today at 9 o'clock for a junior developer position at Asteria Soft. Catherine gasped, realizing this was the resume of the guy who saved her, and that he'd missed his interview because of it. A wave of guilt washed over her. He'd risked himself for her, and in return, he might have lost his chance. Without wasting a second, she pressed the intercom button. Sarah, find out about the junior developer interviews right now. Are they done? The secretary quickly confirmed. The last candidate was in the office now, and one, Carter, hadn't shown up on time. Catherine picked up the phone and personally called the HR manager. In a clear, authoritative tone, she ordered them to invite James Carter for a follow-up meeting today at 4 p.m. The HR manager was surprised but agreed to comply. Hanging up, Catherine felt relief. It wasn't all lost. She could right this wrong. If it weren't for this young man, she might be in a hospital or worse. He deserves his chance, she thought, glancing at his resume. Top grades, volunteer work, talented, driven. Exactly the kind of person the company needed. But there was a personal reason too. She wanted to thank him. He'd vanished so quickly that she hadn't even asked his name. If not for the stray paper, she'd never have known who he was. Catherine touched her shoulder, where a faint ache lingered from when he'd shoved her out of harm's way. That pain was nothing compared to what could have happened. People rarely risked their lives for strangers, but he had. She thought fate had brought them together for a reason. She wanted to make sure James was okay, that he hadn't been hurt falling on the sidewalk, and just to see him again. Soon, the secretary reported that candidate Carter was invited for 4 p.m. Catherine asked to reschedule her other tasks so she could conduct the interview herself. A few hours remained until the appointed time. Catherine tidied herself up, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the intersection. Gratitude and a quiet excitement mingled in her soul. Today nearly ended in tragedy, she thought, but it seems fate decided to give both him and me a chance. James stood on the street for a long time, as if the ground had vanished beneath him. That morning, he'd been full of hope. Now, his dream lay in pieces. He'd saved someone, but at what cost to himself? Barely aware of his actions, he trudged away from the office. He wanted to scream in despair, but no sound came out. He thought of his mom, how hard he'd tried not to let her down, yet life had turned cruel. What now? He asked himself bitterly. Unconsciously, his feet carried him back to his rented room. James took off his jacket and collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The morning's events raced through his mind. The screech of brakes, the girl's terrified eyes, and how, instead of landing a decent job, he'd ended up with nothing. Suddenly, his phone rang, snapping him out of his daze. James jolted upright. An unknown number. "Hello?" he answered, barely hiding his sadness. "Good afternoon. This is the HR department at Asteria Soft. Is this James Carter?" "Yes, it's me," he replied, wary. "The company's management would like to meet with you today at 4 p.m., if that's convenient. We're offering a follow-up interview." James froze. Yes, of course it's convenient," he exhaled, hardly believing his ears. "Thank you so much. Then we'll see you at 4. At reception, say you're here for a meeting with the director. They'll prepare a pass for you." As James thanked them, the caller had already hung up. He stood there for a few seconds, phone still at his ear, then shouted, "Yes!" Unbelievable. They'd given him a second chance. Who had arranged this? Had someone told management about his actions? A wild thought flashed through his mind. Could that girl be the director? But he quickly dismissed it as far-fetched. Regardless, he had to make the most of it. There was still time. James rushed to get ready. He quickly cleaned his stained suit and shoes, changed into a fresh shirt, and smoothed his disheveled hair. He left early, determined to wait there rather than risk being late again. Arriving at the familiar office building nearly half an hour ahead, James checked in at reception. They gave him a pass, and he took the elevator to the administrative floor. In the director's waiting area, the secretary greeted him and asked him to wait. James sat on the edge of a chair, trying to calm his racing heart. He breathed deeply, imagining what questions they might ask and how he'd explain his morning delay. A few minutes later, the secretary smiled at him. "You can go in." James stood. His palms were sweaty, his shoulders tense, but he was determined to seize this chance. He opened the director's office door and stepped toward his future. James crossed the threshold and stopped, unable to believe his eyes. A spacious office flooded with daylight. Near a wide desk with a laptop and papers stood her, the same girl he'd saved that morning. Only now she looked far more confident. No coat, just a crisp white blouse and dark skirt, her tied-back hair accentuating her refined features. Her gaze held a mix of emotions, joy, with a hint of uncertainty. Catherine broke the silence first, smiling softly. "Welcome, James. I'm so glad you came." His throat went dry. He blinked, trying to speak. It's you," he managed to whisper. "Yes, it's me again," she confirmed warmly. "We met this morning under slightly different circumstances." James nodded stiffly, trying to compose himself. Didn't know that you—" He ran a hand through his hair, gathering his thoughts. "You're the head of the company?" "CEO officially," she clarified gently. "Catherine Lewis. But this morning, to you, I was just a stranger in trouble whom you saved without hesitation." She stepped around the desk and approached him. James stood awkwardly, feeling his cheeks flush traitorously. Catherine stopped a step away. Her eyes locked onto his, and he saw genuine gratitude in them. "First, let me thank you," she said quietly. "You saved my life." I didn't even get to say thank you properly. She extended her hand. James shook it awkwardly, her palm warm against his. "You don't have to thank me," he said, flustered. "I did what I had to. Anyone would have done the same." "Trust me, not everyone," she countered, holding his hand a moment longer before gently letting go. "Many would have stood by or not risked themselves. But you did, even though you didn't know me." James felt uneasy under her openness. He gave a shy smile. "I'm just glad you're okay. That's what matters." Catherine nodded, her expression shifting to a more professional tone. "You're probably wondering why we invited you here," she said, returning to her chair and gesturing for James to sit across from her. I'll be honest. If not for this morning, we might never have crossed paths. But circumstances forced me to step in. She looked at him with a touch of regret. I found out you missed your interview solely because you were helping me. A copy of your resume ended up with my papers, so I saw who you were and why you were there. I couldn't let you lose your chance because of that. James lowered his eyes. The morning's despair stirred in his chest, now mixed with gratitude. I thought it was all over, he admitted quietly. But I still don't regret helping you, even if I hadn't gotten a second chance. A human life is more important. Catherine listened intently, warmth flickering in her eyes. You have incredibly sound priorities, James, and our company needs people like you, honest, brave, caring. He looked up, surprised. Sorry if that sounds lofty, she smiled. But it's true. I reviewed your resume, excellent education, strong recommendations. You're exactly who we're looking for as a junior developer. Of course, I'd like to discuss your skills, the projects you've worked on. This will be a sort of interview, if you don't mind. Yes, of course, James nodded, pulling himself together. He still couldn't believe this was real. The CEO herself interviewing him. They talked for a while about his experience and knowledge. James gradually steadied himself, answering with growing confidence, and Catherine seemed pleased with his professional insights. The interview turned into a lively discussion about modern tech and the industry's future. Finally, Catherine leaned back in her chair and said with satisfaction, Well, you've convinced me. I was already pretty sure, but now I see it clearly. You're a great fit for our team. James held his breath in excitement. So, that means? Congratulations, you're hired, she said, smiling sincerely. That is, if you haven't changed your mind after today's adventures. No, not at all, he exclaimed quickly, joy washing over him. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. He barely stopped himself from looking like an overexcited kid. Calming down, he added more steadily, It's an honor to join Asteria. I won't let you down. I'm sure you won't, Catherine nodded. For a moment, a pleasant silence settled between them. Then she added softly, You earned this, James, with your hard work and your actions. He looked away, a bit embarrassed. I hope my colleagues won't mind my unconventional hiring, he said. I wouldn't want anyone to think I got in just because of the incident. Catherine shook her head seriously. Don't worry. Officially, you passed an interview like everyone else, and your qualifications speak for themselves. She smiled faintly. Either way, I'm glad fate brought us together, as a director and as just a person. James looked at her, as if seeing her truly for the first time. She wasn't just a powerful businesswoman, but a young woman whose eyes held genuine emotion. He suddenly realized she wasn't much older than him, maybe 30 at most. Despite their difference in status, they were now talking like old acquaintances, united by that strange morning event. I'm glad too, James said honestly. Even though it started with near tragedy, now it feels like it was meant to happen. Catherine laughed quietly. Do you believe in fate? He paused for a moment. Not really before, he answered truthfully. But lately, I think I'm starting to. Their eyes met, and in that instant, a wordless understanding passed between them. They both felt it. This day had changed them both. Catherine broke the silence first. As for formalities, you can come by HR tomorrow to sign the paperwork. For now, she opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small box. I really want to thank you with more than just words. She handed him the box. James took it curiously. Inside, on velvet, lay a small silver star-shaped pin, the Asteria Soft emblem. This is our corporate badge, Catherine explained. We give it to every new employee. I've kept the tradition of personally presenting it in special cases. Today, I'd like to give it to you. James froze, staring at the badge. Seemed like a small thing, but to him it symbolized so much more. Thank you, he said quietly, meeting her eyes. For everything. Catherine stood, and he rose to meet her. She hesitated, then stepped closer and hugged him, briefly, almost like a friend. But to James, the gesture meant more than words. He felt her warmth and the quick beat of her heart. "Thank you again, James," she whispered, "for being there today." Stepping back, she looked slightly flustered, but James just beamed. "Always happy to be in the right place," he joked. They both laughed softly, and the tension melted away. That day, James left the office as an mysterious soft employee, buoyed by new hope. He tilted his face to the sky, where the sun peeked through the clouds. Fate had taken an incredible turn. A chance encounter at an intersection had not only saved a life but redirected his own. Touching the star badge on his jacket, James thought this was just the beginning of something big, for him and maybe for Catherine too. Their paths had crossed for a reason. Challenges and victories lay ahead, but they'd both remember this day forever. The day a good deed changed their destinies. I hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a comment, sharing your thoughts about it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new and equally exciting stories. See you in the next video.